What is not true about D.H. Lawrence's Sons and Lovers? A. Sons and Lovers is a semi-autobiographical novel. B. It is a psychological study of the familial and love relationships of a working-class English family. C. The film adaptation of the novel was directed by Jack Cardiff. D. The storyline traces 3 generations of Brangwyn family. E. The novel narrates the story of Paul Morell, whose love for his beloved overshadows the affectionate bond with his mother. So here's the answer. 3. D and E only. Let's dive into the explanations. The storyline actually traces the Morell family, not the Brangwyn family. Also, Paul Morell's story is more about the conflict between his love for his mother and his romantic relationships, not overshadowing his bond with his mother due to a beloved. The Rainbow is a book by D.H. Lawrence. First out in 1915, it tracks 3 generations of the Brangwyn fam who live in Nottinghamshire. Pretty cool story that digs into family life across different times. Now, Sons and Lovers from 1913 is where D.H. Lawrence really starts to show his chops as a writer. It's a bit of a deep dive into the messy family and love life of a working-class family in England. The main guy, Paul Morell, is this sensitive artist type who's super close to his mom, Gertrude. She's his rock, and her battle with cancer is rough. Paul's relationships with 2 women, Miriam and Clara, are super complicated because of his bond with his mom. Miriam's the shy, religious type, and Clara's more forward and kinda already has a husband. When his mom gets really sick, Paul makes the tough call to end her suffering with morphine. After she passes, Paul's left sorting out his feelings and ends things with both Miriam and Clara, but he's still got hope for what's next, which really gets into the whole love, loss, and finding yourself vibe of the book. Also, there's this 1960 movie based on Sons and Lovers, directed by Jack Cardiff. They turned the book into a film that really brings that early 1900s vibe. As for the UGC NET exam, both of these works by Lawrence are super important because they help you get how literature can reflect and challenge societal norms and personal struggles. Understanding these themes can definitely give you an edge in the exam. Question 42. Which among the following statements are true about Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights? A. This novel was published in 1847. B. Emily Bronte published this novel under the pseudonym Ellis Bell. C. Lockwood and Catherine Linton are the main narrators of the story. D. The novel is unique for its abstention from authorial intrusion, unusual structure, and narrative technique. E. Wuthering Heights was the 3rd novel of Emily Bronte. And the right pick is 3. A, B, and D. Only here's why. Wuthering Heights was Bronte's only novel, not her 3rd. And the main narrators are actually Lockwood and Nellie, not Catherine Linton. Wuthering Heights, written by Emily Bronte under the name Ellis Bell back in 1847, really stands out with its intense vibes and unique storytelling style. Unlike other books from that time, this one skips the usual author commentary, diving straight into a story that feels both dramatic and poetic. The whole story is mostly told by this outsider guy named Lockwood, but we get the juicy details from Ellen Dean, the housekeeper. She spills the beans about Heathcliff, this orphan the Earnshaw family took in, and how he shakes things up with the Earnshaws and the Lintons in a remote part of Yorkshire during the late 1700s. Heathcliff is pretty bitter because he was treated badly and is heartbroken over Cathy Earnshaw marrying Edgar Linton, a really nice guy. This drives Heathcliff to seek revenge on everyone, a grudge that lasts for generations. Even after Cathy dies giving birth, Heathcliff can't shake his intense love for her, staying obsessed until he dies. In the end, the younger members of the Earnshaw and Linton families come together, suggesting some hope for peace after all the drama. Emily Bronte, known mainly for Wuthering Heights, didn't crank out as many works as her sisters Charlotte and Anne, who had several each. Here's what Emily did put out. Wuthering Heights, 1847, her only novel published as Ellis Bell. It's a deep dive into themes of love, revenge, and eerie stuff, which is golden material for analyzing in the UGC NET exam because of its complex themes and emotional depth. Poetry. Emily and her sisters also dropped some poetry under fake names. They put out a book in 1846 called Poems by Currer, Ellis, and Acton Bell. Emily's own poems include bangers like No Coward Soul Is Mine, Remembrance, The Prisoner, and Last Lines. These poems are also a big deal for the UGC NET exam because they show off her ability to convey intense emotions and complex ideas, super useful for understanding her literary style. Question 43. Which among the following are the titles of the periodicals? A. Dickens' Household Words. B. S.T. Coleridge Friend. C. Richard Steele's Guardian. D. Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis. E. Leigh Hunt's Indicator. All right, the correct answer is 3. A, B, C, and E. Only, let's break it down. The Metamorphosis is actually a novella by Kafka, not a periodical, unlike the others listed, which are all periodicals. Back in the 1850s, Charles Dickens decided to run a weekly magazine called Household Words, which he named after a line from Shakespeare's Henry Futh. He toyed with a bunch of other names like The Robin, The Household Voice, The Comrade, The Lever, and The Highway of Life before landing on Household Words. This title selection process is worth noting for the UGC NET exam because it shows Dickens' thoughtful approach to connecting his literary work with broader cultural references. In 1809, Samuel Taylor Coleridge tried his hand at publishing again with a weekly journal called The Friend. Coleridge was into a lot of stuff: law, literary criticism, you name it. But he was pretty disorganized and not great with money, which led to some serious cash flow problems. He had to hit up some rich buddies for loans to keep the journal going. Despite getting some initial backing, including from MPs, The Friend eventually tanked because of Coleridge's financial flubs. This example highlights the challenges faced by literary figures in managing publications, a good point to discuss in the UGC NET exam for insights into the economic aspects of literary production. Sir Richard Steele, together with his buddy Joseph Addison, kicked off The Spectator after they wrapped up their first project, The Tatler, which started on the 12th of April, 1709. They put it out 3 times a week under the fake name Isaac Bickerstaff. Steele wanted The Tatler to call out societal fakery and push for more simplicity in life. Most of the stuff in there was his own writing. They had to shut it down in 1711 to avoid political heat, which led them to start The Spectator and later The Guardian. Understanding these publications and their impact on society is crucial for the UGC NET exam because it gives a glimpse into how literature can influence and reflect societal changes and attitudes. Leigh Hunt was a pretty big deal in the English lit scene. He co-founded The Examiner, a radical journal that became a hotspot for the Hunt Circle, which included cool cats like William Hazlitt and Charles Lamb. Hunt was instrumental in bringing poets like John Keats and Percy Bysshe Shelley into the spotlight. He didn't stop there. He also ran The Reflector, a quarterly mag, and The Indicator, a weekly pub that he probably filled with his own writings. Plus, he briefly managed The Companion, a weekly focused on literature and the arts. For the UGC NET exam, understanding Hunt's role in promoting romantic poets through these publications can provide valuable insights into the history of English literature and its dissemination. Then there's The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, first out in German as Die Verwandlung in 1915. It kicks off with a line that's become super famous. Upon awakening from unsettling dreams one morning, Gregor Samsa discovered that he had been metamorphosed in his bed into an enormous insect. Although some folks think Gregor turns into a cockroach, the original German word Kafka used, Ungeziefer, doesn't pin down any specific bug. In the story, Gregor's strict dad locks him up in his room, and after his dad throws an apple at him, Gregor slowly dies from a mix of being ignored by his family and his own sad loneliness. This narrative is a gold mine for UGC NET exam discussions because of its rich allegorical layers and Kafka's unique narrative style, which can help unpack themes of alienation and identity in modern literature. Question 44. Which among the following writers are popular for partition narratives? A. Krishna Sapti, B. Shashi Deshpande, C. Saros Kawasji, D. Bharti Mukherjee, E. Rahi Masum Raza. Here's the correct choice. 3. A, C, and E. Only peeking into the reasons Krishna Sapti, Saros Kawasji, and Rahi Masum Raza are known for their works that explore the themes and traumas associated with the partition of India. Shashi Deshpande and Bharati Mukherjee, while significant authors, are not primarily known for partition narratives. Partition literature is this super interesting and varied area that includes gems like Khushwant Singh's Train to Pakistan, Bisham Sahani's Thomas, and Bapsi Sidhwa's Ice Candy Man. These books dive deep into the partition of India, looking at all the intense human emotions and complex social political stuff that went down. Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children is a big name here too. It snagged the Booker Prize and the Booker of Booker's Prize, highlighting how globally recognized and impactful these partition-themed stories are. For the UGC NET exam, understanding these works is key because they reflect significant historical events and their profound effects on society and individuals. Krishna Sobti was this awesome Hindi language writer from India, known for her deep stories and essays. She got the Sahitya Akademi Award in 1980 for Zindagi Nama. Originally from what's now Pakistan, she moved to India after partition. She wrote under the pseudonym Hashmat and pumped out works like Dar Se Bichuri, Surajmukhi Ander Ke, and Yarun Ke Yar. Her story, Sikka Badal Gaya, really shows off how she captured the vibe of partition in her novels and short stories, both in Hindi and Urdu. Her contributions are important for the UGC NET exam because they offer insights into the literary representation of historical upheavals. Saros Dara Kawasji, who was born in India but later moved to Canada, was this super versatile guy, novelist, short story writer, critic, and academic. He even ended up as a professor emeritus at the University of Regina. His work spans several areas, enriching both literature and academia. Rahi Masoom Raza made his name with Urdu and Hindi poetry and also as a lyricist and screenwriter in Bollywood. He's known for his dialogues in Main Tulsi Tere Angan Ki and for writing the script for the iconic 1988 TV series Mahabharat, showcasing his wide range in the literary world. His diverse talents and contributions also make for great discussion points for the UGC NET exam, especially in understanding the role of literature in popular culture. Shashi Deshpande, a big name in Indian literature, started her writing career with a bunch of short stories back in 1978, and then came out with her first novel, The Dark Holds No Terror, in 1980. She really hit her stride when her novel That Long Silence snagged the Sahitya Akademi Award in 1990. She didn't stop there, though. She got the Padma Shri in 2009, a pretty major honor. One of her later novels, Shadow Play, was even up for the Hindu Literary Prize in 2014. She spoke up about some pretty heavy stuff in her keynote at the 9th Goa Arts and Literature Festival on December 6, 2018, warning about the risks of pushing for a Hindu nation and bringing up the violent past of the India-Pakistan partition. For the UGC NET exam, diving into Deshpande's works is great for exploring themes of gender, identity, and the historical context of modern India. Bharati Mukherjee, originally from India but making her mark in the US and Canada, passed away in 2017, leaving behind a solid legacy. She was a professor at UC Berkeley and wrote a ton of novels, short stories, and nonfiction that cross over different cultures and places. Here's a rundown of her novels: The Tiger's Daughter, 1971, Wife, 1975, Jasmine, 1989, The Holder of the World, 1993. Leave It to Me, 1997, Desirable Daughters, 2002, The Tree Bride, 2004, Miss New India, 2011. These books are a treasure trove for the UGC NET exam because they open up discussions on immigration, cultural transitions, and identity, perfect for dissecting cross-cultural narratives and their impact on society. Question 45. Which among the following are not mentioned as the aspects of the novel by E.M. Forster? A. Story. B. Imagination. C. Plot. Harmony. E. Prophecy. So here's the answer for B and D. And let's dive into the explanations. Forster's aspects of the novel include story, plot, and prophecy, but not imagination or harmony, making options B and D correct. Aspects of the Novel is a book that came from a bunch of talks E.M. Forster gave at Trinity College, Cambridge back in 1927. He chats about the English novel and breaks it down using examples from classic books. Forster points out what he thinks are the 7 key parts of any novel, which he lists as story, characters, plot, fantasy, prophecy, pattern, and rhythm. For those digging into the UGC NET exam, this book is pretty crucial because it offers a framework for analyzing novels. Understanding these elements can really help with dissecting the structure and themes of literary works, which is a big part of the exam's literature section. Question 46. Which of the following is true about Tennessee Williams' A Streetcar Named Desire? A. It is set in New Orleans. B. The protagonist is a Mississippi landowner. C, it ends with Blanche's defeat and departure. D, Tom Wingfield is the narrator. E, Laura and Stella are cousins. And the answer is 2, A and C only. Here's why. The play is indeed set in New Orleans and ends with Blanche's tragic defeat and departure. Tom Wingfield and the detail about Laura and Stella are from different Williams's works. A Streetcar Named Desire is a play by Tennessee Williams that first hit the stage and was published in 1947. It snagged the Pulitzer Prize for Drama, making it a pretty big deal. The play dives into the life of Blanche Dubois, a former Southern belle who's hit hard times. After a bunch of personal setbacks, she leaves her fancy past behind and moves into a crummy apartment in New Orleans with her younger sister Stella and rough-around-the-edges brother-in-law Stanley. The story zooms in on Blanche's mental and moral breakdown, showing how her classy fantasies crash into Stanley's brutal reality. Here's the lowdown on the play. Blanche rocks up at her sister Stella's place in New Orleans, spilling the beans about losing their family home, Belle Rev. Stanley gets suspicious about how the place was lost. Blanche clearly isn't a fan of the working class vibes. During a poker night, Stanley's temper flares. He gets violent with Stella. Blanche tries to convince Stella to ditch Stanley, but Stella's not having it. Stanley overhears and digs up dirt on Blanche's shaky past. Blanche tries to find a bit of hope flirting with a young guy, showing just how desperate she's become. She and Mitch, a lonely guy, hit it off until Stanley spills all about Blanche's scandal-filled past. Mitch confronts Blanche and calls off any wedding plans. Things go from bad to worse when Stanley takes advantage of Blanche's fragile state. Her mental health spirals, and the talk of sending her to an asylum gets real. Stella is torn about believing Blanche's story of what Stanley did. In the end, a doctor and nurse come to take Blanche away. She's resistant, but has to go. Stella's left in pieces, but stays with Stanley despite everything. Blanche's past mistakes in Laurel, including a scandalous affair, come to light. Her dreams of a savior, Shep Huntley, fall apart, and her tragic slide into madness ends with her being taken to an institution. For the UGC NET exam, diving into this play is key for understanding themes like illusion versus reality, the impact of past on present, and the breakdown of complex characters. It's a great example of American drama and Tennessee Williams' knack for portraying intense emotional conflicts and societal critiques. Question 47. Which of the following is true about Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot? A. It illustrates vanity of humankind. B. It has uncompromising views on humanitarian communism. C. It projects self-deception, striving to disguise failure. D. It is a static representation without structure or development. E. Its incoherent dialogue suggests despair of a society. All right, here's the scoop for D and E. Only let's explore why. The play is known for its lack of traditional structure and its dialogue that reflects a breakdown in communication, fitting into the broader themes of existential despair and societal disconnection. The right picks are D and E, which are, it is a static representation without structure or development, and its incoherent dialogue suggests despair of a society. Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot is classic theater of the absurd stuff, without much in the way of a normal plot, structure, or character growth. It digs into the whole existential vibe, showing life's repetitive drag through characters who just can't stop waiting for the no-show Godot. This static nature really drives home the point that there's no real action or advancement happening, which kind of reflects a deep societal despair in this pointless hunt for meaning. The dialogue, which can seem pretty scrambled, reflects how communication has broken down in society and how isolated everyone feels, beefing up the play's big theme of existential angst. Why the other options aren't right. A. It illustrates vanity of humankind. While Waiting for Godot does get into some deep existential stuff, including how life might just be an exercise in futility, to say just shows how vain people are is kind of missing the bigger, more complex philosophical ideas it's playing with. B. It has uncompromising views on humanitarian communism. This play isn't really about political stuff like communism. It's more about exploring big, existential, and philosophical questions. C. It projects self-deception, striving to disguise failure. Sure, the play does touch on self-deception, but that's not the main gig here. It's more focused on the endless waiting and the overall human condition. For the UGC NET exam, understanding these distinctions is crucial because it helps you appreciate the depth and nuances of the play, especially in terms of how it reflects on broader existential and societal themes, which is super useful for digging into literary analysis and criticism. Waiting for Godot, written by Samuel Beckett, is a prime example of the theater of the absurd. It skips the usual story stuff like plot and character growth and dives deep into existential questions instead. The play shows two guys, Vladimir and Estragon, stuck in an endless wait for a guy named Godot who never shows up. This never-ending waiting reflects how sometimes life feels like it's going nowhere, and the weird, often nonsensical chat between characters shows how people are losing touch with each other and society at large. Beckett uses these elements to paint a picture of the despair and aimlessness that a lot of folks feel in today's world. Theater of the Absurd explained. The theater of the absurd includes plays from European and American playwrights around the 1950s to early 1960s, capturing the existential belief that life doesn't really have a built-in purpose, like the philosopher Albert Camus suggested. This wasn't a formal group, but playwrights like Samuel Beckett and Eugene Ionesco were part of it, and they all kind of agreed that trying to find a big meaning in life might be pointless. Their plays, which break away from normal storytelling, show just how confused and hopeless people can feel. Waiting for Godot is a textbook example of this movement, ditching a typical plot and focusing on characters caught in a never-ending wait, highlighting the weird and sometimes depressing absurdity of life. For the UGC NET exam, grasping the essence of the theater of the absurd, especially through Waiting for Godot, is important because it opens up discussions on how literature can reflect existential views and the sense of disconnection in modern society. This understanding can be crucial for exploring broader themes in literature and their impact on culture and philosophy. Question 48. Which of the following assertions are not true in the context of culture industry? A. The term culture industry was used by the Frankfurt School to describe the operations of mass media. B. The dominant capitalist class instills its values and beliefs in the minds of the working class people. C. The word industry signifies the production of cultural products for mass consumption. D. The authentic culture arising from the working class is preserved and protected. E. The mass culture thus produced induces activism and critical thinking among the youth. So here's the answer for D and E. Let's dive into the explanations. Assertions D and E are false because the culture industry theory suggests that authentic working class culture is not preserved but commodified, and mass culture often leads to passivity, not activism or critical thinking. Assertion D isn't right. The idea behind the culture industry from the Frankfurt School crowd is that real, authentic culture from the working class isn't really preserved or protected. Instead, it gets turned into a product that's all about making money and fitting everyone into the same mold for mass consumption. Assertion E misses the mark too. The kind of mass culture churned out by the culture industry is often knocked for making people more about following the crowd and less about thinking for themselves. The Frankfurt School was pretty worried about how popular culture might be used to keep everyone in line and stop them from questioning things too deeply. Extra bits. A. The phrase culture industry was definitely coined by the Frankfurt School, particularly by thinkers like Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer. They talked about how cultural goodies were becoming cookie cutter and were just another item to sell, which messes with people's ability to think independently and critically. B. The idea that the big-time capitalists are pushing their values on working-class folks fits right in with the Frankfurt School's critical views. They believe that the culture industry helps bake in the values that keep the top dogs on top, making everyone else fall in line. The use of industry in culture industry points to the mass production of cultural stuff. The Frankfurt School guys highlighted how culture was being cranked out like any factory product under capitalism, turning unique cultural expressions into generic items for sale. For the UGC NET exam, understanding these points is crucial because they help you unpack how media and culture can influence society and individual thought, a big theme in studying mass communication and cultural studies. These insights are key to digging into how culture shapes and is shaped by societal forces. Diving into the culture industry isn't just hitting the books for the sake of it. It's a deep dive into critical theory that's super relevant for nailing the UGC NET English exam. Coined by thinkers like Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer in their piece, The Culture Industry, Enlightenment as Mass Deception from Dialectic of Enlightenment, this concept really opens your eyes. It paints a picture of popular culture as a kind of factory, cranking out stuff that turns everyone into passive consumers. This easy-to-grab, pleasurable content is supposed to keep us chilled out, even when times are tough. What's key for the UGC NET is how this idea shows the danger of making people think they need stuff they really don't, all thanks to mass-produced culture that's tied up with capitalism. While comparing it to high arts, Adorno and Horkheimer highlight how risky this industry can be. Getting a grip on the culture industry isn't just about understanding some dense theory. It's about seeing how society's thoughts and needs are shaped. It's a journey that doesn't just boost your academic skills, but also gives you a way to look deeper into today's culture. As you prep, really get into this topic. It's not just a chapter in a book. It's a critical viewpoint that could really lift your game in the UGC NET English exam. Question 49. Which of the following assumptions are true in the context of new criticism? A. The new movement in literature popularized closed reading of the text. B. The leading critics of new criticism are Alan Tate, Robert Penn Warren, R.P. Blackmer, and Kenneth Burke. C. The critical approach is extensively used in the study of novels and plays. D. This critical approach tends to discredit historical, social, and political contexts of a work of literature. E. J.C. Ransom published a book, New Criticism, wherein he appreciates I.A. Richards, William Empson, and T.S. Eliot. Here's the answer. 4. A, B, and D, only peeking into the reasons. New criticism did focus on close reading, involved key critics like Tate and Warren, and generally downplayed the importance of a work's historical and social contexts. New criticism was all about digging into the actual art itself, not worrying about the artist's life or the times they lived in. It pushed for looking at texts super closely, using some smart techniques to break down every bit of the writing. Key players who kicked things off included I.A. Richards and William Empson. T.S. Eliot also pitched in with some heavy thoughts on what literary tradition is all about. John Crow Ransom was the guy who really spelled out what new criticism was aiming at. Other big names in this scene were Clent Brooks, R.P. Blackmer, and a few more. They all had different takes, though, so it wasn't like they all agreed on everything. By the 1970s, other ways of looking at text started to take over, but new criticism had a good run. It saw poetry as a special kind of conversation that could share feelings and ideas in ways that science or philosophy couldn't touch. According to new critics, the way poems are written, their form, is totally tied up with what they're about. They focused a lot on the deeper meanings of words, not just their dictionary definitions, and how things like metaphors and symbols add layers to the text. They argued that you can't just swap out words in a poem without messing up its whole vibe. Clent Brooks called this the heresy of paraphrase. His book, The Well-Wrought Urn, is like a masterclass in doing a close read on poetry. The new critics believed that art can say stuff that's otherwise hard to express, and they were all about finding the hidden depths in poetic language. They thought the true magic of poetry comes from the tensions and conflicts that don't get neatly resolved. For the UGC NET exam, understanding new criticism is crucial because it teaches you how to analyze texts in a detailed and structured way, helping you pull out deeper meanings from literary works, which is a big part of acing the exam. Question 50. In absurd theater, the characters often use disjointed, repetitive, and cliched speech to A. Suggest that meaninglessness is also about a meaning. B. Suggest the working of the subconscious. C. Bring about the comic action and relief. D. Illustrate the illogical and purposelessness of human condition. E. Defy the self-professed modern notion of dignity and wisdom. All right, the correct pick is 4, A and D only. Here's the lowdown. In absurd theater, the strange and repetitive speech is used to show how life can seem pointless and absurd. Theater of the absurd popped up in the 1950s thanks to some European and American playwrights. They got a lot of their gloomy vibes from Albert Camus' ideas about life being kind of meaningless, a real downer, but super thought-provoking. These writers, like Samuel Beckett and Eugene Ionesco, didn't band together formally, but definitely shared a bleak outlook on existence. Their plays are all about how life doesn't seem to have a clear purpose, loaded with existential angst. Instead of logical storylines, you get bizarre, illogical chatter and often just silence at the end. Forget the usual beginnings, middles, and ends. These plays scrap traditional drama setups, focusing instead on how nothing much changes and everything feels stuck. For example, Beckett's Waiting for Godot doesn't have the kind of plot you'd expect. Time just loops without any progress, and the way people talk is all over the place, not making much sense. The Bald Soprano is another one that shows how pointless and frustrating talking can be. These plays mix weird, funny bits with some deep, dark questions about what we're all doing here. They pull in tricks from old-timey comedy like vaudeville and get artsy influences from surrealism, existentialism, and expressionism, kind of echoing the strange vibes you find in Franz Kafka's stories. At first, this stuff really shocked people because it tossed out all the usual theater rules. It hit a nerve during the mid-20th century, reflecting all the existential worries of that time. Although it started to blend into mainstream culture by the mid-1960s, it opened the door for a bunch of new, wild theatrical experiments. For the UGC NET exam, it's important to grasp the theater of the absurd because it's a key example of how literature can reflect and question the human condition, pushing the boundaries of what theater can be. This helps you understand the broader impacts of literary movements and their historical contexts, which can come up big on the exam.